Cyberhounds have many names. As you can see, mine's the Misai Laken Hound, but most just call them trash. Today we're going to look at a min-maxed Cyberhound. Yes, a min-maxed with a god roll Riven. So I'm going to give you my guide on how to effectively use these hounds, and by effectively I mean kind of like strugglingly, because they have very limited use cases. But they do have some uses. So before we get into the build of the hound and the Riven for the hound, I would just like to say first and foremost and before everything else that you should only be using these on a tanky frame. I understand that health and armor only scale so far, but health and armor scale pretty well on the hounds. As you can see, my hound right now has 3,200 health. So without a tanky frame, your hounds will die a lot. But when I use it on Atlas, a lot of times my hound will even outlive my Atlas, even though it's not like my Atlas is dying. But sometimes those pesky little intruders that come every 5 to 10 minutes will zap my powers. So that being said, let's get into the hounds. So we will take a look at the weapons, but before we get to that, we're going to look at the Perceptus mods. We're going to look at whatever the hell you want to call these specialty mods. We'll just call them augments for the sake of brevity. Now we're going to start at the bottom because this one is the easiest to digest. The Synergized Perspectives. Of the Perspectives mods, of which there are 3, the only one that is worth using is the Synergized Perspectives. Unfortunately, the other 2 are just complete trash. They're not even worth discussing. But this one has a caveat. It does apply good CC, and it does apply good status spread. The only downside is that I think it's a bug, but it does not proc the synth mods. Awesome! One of the main reasons you would use this to proc the synth mods, if you're not sure what those are, I don't know what to tell you. Actually, I do know what to tell you. The synth mods allow you to spawn health orbs when you damage stuff, and it allows you to pick up health orbs at max health. So this, a lot of people put on because they think it'll spawn with the synth fiber mods. It does not. So if you are solely running this for the synth mods, unfortunately it's not going to do that. It's just going to be a status spreading and a CC thing. So that's the long and short of that. We're mostly running it for the status spread and the CC. Then we have the repo audit. Now the reason I'm using repo audit is because it provides a consistent disarm. It also applies a magnetic proc, which is like but it's that consistent big radius disarm, which for tanky melee frames like Atlas, it's really good to have all the enemies run at you. It's nice and convenient. Now, the reason we're running that over the other audits, which we will go over, is because this one is very specific. So, null audit. This strips half of an Eximus's aura, and it applies the aura to the hound. The wiki, if I'm not mistaken, says that the hound can only get 1 aura at a time. That's false. Because I've seen my hound have like 5 different auras on it at once before, or maybe not 5, but multiple auras on it. Those auras actually apply buffs to your character as well and your teammates that are nearby. So it can be useful in scenarios like that, but overall I feel like Repo's more of a beneficial thing because, one, when I see Eximus, I kill Eximus and I prioritize it, so my hound won't have time to get to it, and 2, it doesn't seem to like prioritize Eximus units with this on it, so I really don't think it's worth it in the hopes that it randomly gets an Eximus. But if you do run this in like an hour mission, you will see it apply the effects every now and then, but it's spotty, right? It's just not very consistent. Even if you put it in the first slot, if you're unaware, top left to top right and then bottom left to bottom right is the priority order. So the priority of these do matter. Now, there is one other audit, which is Equilibrium audit. This one does trash damage. The damage is inexistent. With armor and stuff, that 300 damage is non-existent. And Eximus units were not going to get knocked down by this, especially. I think they spread their thing to their teammates too, so they won't get knocked down. But the range is so small on this, it's not worth it. The Equilibrium audit, if it had 30 meters, you could probably make the case to use it. But unfortunately, they're just like, I don't know why some things have 15 and then they make it 30. It just doesn't make any sense. It's inconsistent and it's whack. It's whack. Now, Evasive Denial. A lot of people don't run this one. They feel like it's the worst. I think it's the best, and let me explain why. This is kind of anecdotal. I don't have a sheet of paper that tells you, oh, this saves you X% of the time. But I noticed that in my day-to-day playthrough with Atlas missions or what have you, that my Hound has much more survivability because it's just straight up dodging fire instead of taking damage. So the advantage to running this over the other augments. I'm glad you asked. Let's go over them. So diversified denial. This is the very popular one that most people run, but the downside is when you run this, your other stuff isn't going to work basically. When diversified denial is in effect, it cannot use any of the other augments. It will not use them. So if you are using diversified denial, I would highly suggest that you use this here, and then you remove these two for like whatever else you want, but I would not use the like augments. I would use like, I don't know, Medi-Ray or to keep the bot, because this will actually keep it close to you if you put Medi-Ray on it, or if you slap it like Medi-Ray here, or like Shield Charger or something like that. But unfortunately, it's just it's not as good as it seems, and because a lot of people think that this is objectively the best, and I disagree. So now let's look at Reflex Denial. Reflex Denial is another one that seems like this is top tier for Hounds, but it's like it's got some issues, right? So this applies a bubble to your Hound that I think shooting the bubble yourself will apply magnetic procs everything, and because it says it reflects 90% of the damage, I think that includes the damage you're dealing to it, but it's within a small radius, and this it's so finicky. Like some weapons can't shoot through this bubble that it makes, which can mean that even though it's doing 90% of the damage you've given to it, it's only in 12 meters, and maybe your bullets would have gone like a million meters. So this can block your shots, and even if it doesn't block your shots, sometimes it can block your teammates' shots. There are weapons that can go through it, but not all of them go through it. Like sometimes the Arcoplasma goes through it, and sometimes it doesn't. I don't understand it. So this is finicky, but I do feel like this gives your Hound a lot of survival, but it can be annoying for when your Hound is in front of you and going down a hallway and now you can't shoot anything because your Hound is in the way. But with this, it provides no downsides, and it's just straight up like, it dodges enemies' fire. This you will see effect from time to time. I have seen people cover videos where they say it's useless, but it is one of those things that if you use it, you will start to see it. Like it'll disappear, and then it's noticeable in game if you use it for a while. But if you're just in a simulacrum like charting, you're not going to notice it. But that's anecdotal, right? So the mods are pretty bog standard, nothing special for a companion. Very average companion. Again, I would highly suggest you run this with a tanky frame so that you can get the most of your Link mods and the primed pack leader. So it works perfect with Atlas. Well, I say perfect, but... So there's 3 different like melee weapons that look like guns or something for these Hounds. And there's only 2 that I would recommend going for. There's one that's Impact Slash that I would recommend mostly, and then there's one that's Puncture Slash. The Puncture Slash is going to do a little bit more raw damage, but the Impact Slash has a little bit more versatility. And by versatility, I mean you can slap scattering, impact on it, which can full strip enemies. Sometimes you'll see, with this build, you'll see it full strip stuff, but with armor strip changes, a lot of times people have full strip on their build already. Maybe they have Thero Strike. Maybe they just have a big cock and they don't need any armor strip. So this is like the standard build I would suggest, though. Oh, but I have a beefed out Riven. Pretty much God roll aside from Corpus damage, but this thing can still kill Corpus despite that, which is very odd. So yeah, beefed out Riven. And just so you're aware, I just want to show you, look at 3,900 and now it's going to 1,900. So it's almost doubling the damage. So this is obscenely ridiculous. And before we get into like the build, because it's just raw damage, right? It's just raw damage with some status chance, which I would forma this out if I were you, but but so if you were to get a Riven for this, or you're thinking about maybe like you'll like the Hounds and you're thinking about getting a Riven, you're either going to drastically overpay for a Riven, or you're a silver-tongued devil and you can negotiate someone off a ledge, or you're buying it off someone who doesn't know what they're doing. That's the option I would suggest. Maybe get it for 50 plat from someone who doesn't know. But I believe I spent 100 plat on this, and the guy who I bought it off of remarked to me that he had a lot of people message him or post in chat looking for Hound Rivens, and he would message them and be like 100 plat, and they would literally laugh in his face from what he said to me. And he was like, I'm very happy you did a quick, easy trade because I can't tell you how much of a hassle this augment has been, or this Riven. And I was like, yeah, dude, I can't tell you how much of a hassle it's been trying to find this. It literally took me like 2 weeks to find a Riven. I rolled this myself. I bought this unrolled for like 100 plat, which is a lot for an unrolled, I would say. So Getting a Riven for this is going to be a challenge because the only way that I know how to is to, with that one Arbiter's Covenant, buying it when it's in the shop, a companion Riven, and hopefully getting one for the companion. Luckily, I was able to find one that was specifically for the weapon type I wanted, because again, there's 3 different weapon types for these hounds, so you might not even get the one you want. So if you're trying to get a Riven for this, just be ready for people messaging you saying, there are no Hound Rivens. I cannot tell you how many fucking times I had people say, there's no Hound Rivens when there are. You're lying to my face. You don't know what you're talking about. Why are you messaging me? And then there's other people who are like, there's Hound Rivens? What? So you're going to get a lot of frustration if you're trying to get a Hound Riven, and quite frankly, I don't think it's worth it. But if you're one of the 3 people who are like me and think that the Panzer Vulpafile is boring, you want a fashion, you want to use something that's fun and cool, or you just want to use something different, you want to use something flashy, then by all means, suffer, I guess. So there are a couple builds for it, right? This one's raw damage, this one's raw damage. I would probably take out the status chance on these builds, but again, another forma for something that's mid, and it is providing a little bit of status. Like, you will see these statuses proc from time to time, which is mid. But I've got a couple different builds. This one is successful, right? This is my most successful one, but if you go for a more status-oriented build, radiation can be great. It can be a great boon to your build because it's basically applying crowd control. The enemies are attacking each other instead of attacking the Hound, which can give the Hound more survivability, and it is also just helping you out, I guess, bud. So this one's more for Corpus, pretty much the same as everything else, but just corpified with all the 60/60 mods. So it's tough, right? A lot of the mods for these Hounds don't work. A lot of them don't work. Like, I don't think most of them work. Like, I don't think the Banes work. I don't think the Fury works. I've tested Fury, I've tested Reach. It's not like I'm just reading the wiki. I've tested Range. It doesn't seem like any of those work at all. I've tested it with equipping no mods and then letting it go, and then equipping all the Fury mods that it'll let me and letting it go, and I see no difference at all. So in my testing, and plus it doesn't show anything on the numbers, but these numbers lie, so whatever. So that's the long and short of it without going on too much. It's rough. It's rough. So before we show off the Atlas, we're just going to show, if you do happen to have armor strip, this is what it'll look like. It'll actually kill. So let's do some armor strippy dippy. And now they're full stripped because I'm a god among men. See, even though they're set to off, they will start attacking when they get disarmed, which is like probably a bug. Of course they're not doing it now that I mentioned it. We're gonna have to shoot some. So the Hound, yeah, see, now the Hound's attacking. So the Hound, when enemies are full stripped, the Hound will kill them. Like, yeah, I get it. Any wet noodle can get killed by the Hound. But this is basically what it does. It will kill these enemies. Oh my god, I tested this so much before and it was working perfectly, and now it doesn't want to work at all. But, so it will kill full stripped enemies. So if you have something that full strip, it will competently kill in like a hit. It will actually kill Steel Path enemies in like a hit, which is very surprising, but it has big survivability issues, so I wouldn't recommend it for Harrow, even though I do use it on him from time to time. I would mostly recommend it for Atlas, because now if you look, it has very beefy stats, so it can actually like survive, which you're kind of using it for its status, right? So see, it's applying 6 procs there to a lot of them. So it's applying good status. It's essentially like an extra rock guy, because it's like enemies will be attacking it. I don't think it has threat priority at all. It's just a standard unit, so you'll only see 1 or 2 enemies on it, whereas the rock golem here can get a lot more when you're using the augment, which there's a video about on my channel, Titanic Rumbler. But so it's really lackluster, but I do think it can be good for applying statuses for condition overload. Again, though, it's not going to apply the synth bonus that it hits. I think it's a glitch, so get the word out. But as you can see, it's applying several statuses and it's disarming everything, which is great for Atlas. So now let's just quickly get into a real match, just so that we can see a little bit of it in like real action instead of the succulacrum. Because succulacrum isn't always, I mean, it's pretty consistent test, but it's It's not for pets, right? It doesn't really show anything for pets. So yes, I know this isn't level 5,000, but we're gonna look at how it works on just a standard mission because this thing survives. It does survive given you're on a tanky frame. So let's rush the fuck into these dudes. I do use this on Atlas. It's not like I don't use this, by the way, for long missions, not just like in and outs. But so you see, it's actually like doing some damage, but it's not enough. But it's stripping enemies of their weapons, for the most part. For the most part. But it's providing functions, right? See, they're stripped. So it's mostly for utility. Mostly for utility. But again, on tanky frames, I noticed this thing has great survivability. Sometimes my Atlas will die before the companion does, and then once I die, then it's like, now the companion dies. So it's one of those things that I wish I could say that this is S tier and it's going to replace Panzer Volp. But unfortunately, it's another one of those things where, yeah, it's not going to replace your Volp. Another reason why it's great on Atlas is because your punch, your landslide, which is your bread and butter, is going to heal up your bot. So it's pretty much going to like last forever. Like you can take this into multi-hour survivals. I can't recall if I've ever level capped with this. I really can't recall that at all, to be honest with you. But it will survive for hours. It's not going to die right away. It will pretty much never die ever. If you're using a melee tanky frame or specifically a tanky frame. Specifically Atlas, I think it works great on. I think it's one of the best companions for Atlas because I find I don't need the Panzer's viral priming on Atlas because at least for my build, my Atlas is just like the punches. I have a God Roll Riven. That's why I have a God Roll Riven on my melee, and I can when I'm playing correctly and I'm building up combo and then I'm activating my landslide, I can make it just one-shot everything forever. But this is more of a Hound showcase. So yeah, it's mostly there for the utility. It's applying statuses. It's doing some minor damage. It's applying some inconvenience, and it's living. So it's not going to replace your Panzer Volpophyla on most builds, but I do think it's like the perfect companion for Atlas in my humble opinion. But so there's not really too much more to cover. Unfortunately, I'm not going to do the whole mission because it's pretty simple, right? It's applying some statuses, it is disarming enemies, and it's surviving because we're using landslide a lot of the time. So yeah, that's the long and short of it. If you felt like you learned something from this video, or you found it entertaining to just see a god roll Atlas Riven in action, then the only way that you can let me know that information is to buy a plane ticket to Ukraine and then become a conscript in the Ukrainian army. Yes, the same Ukrainian army that had a state-sponsored neo-Nazi defense force that our U.S. tax dollars went to fund. Because you know what, bud? We really got to protect those U.S.-funded biolabs that are in Ukraine and that are a major reason of why we're sending billions of dollars and we're bringing Ukrainian troops to America to train them. Because, you know, we got to protect those U.S.-funded biolabs that are in Ukraine and definitely not up to anything nefarious at all. Especially because Ukraine has had a very, very troubled past in how its President Zelensky, or whatever the hell his name is, came into power. So, yeah, go join Ukraine and die for absolutely nothing because some bankers and politicians need they monies because they're doing heinous stuff. So, yeah, that's the only reason, that's the only way to let me know that you learned something from this video or that you hated it, is go die for nothing. Yep. So get on that post haste. Bye.